The silent passenger. Leo tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, humming along to the old song on the radio. The highway stretched ahead, a long gray ribbon under the afternoon sun. He was a truck driver, and this was his life: long roads, loud engines, and the constant hum of tires on asphalt. His big truck, which he lovingly called Bertha, was his home for weeks at a time. He was on his way from Chicago to Portland, carrying a load of machine parts. The trip was usually lonely, but today he had a special delivery to make first. A small, personal one. On the passenger seat next to him was a sealed cardboard box. It wasn't heavy, but it felt important. Inside was a hand-carved wooden eagle, a gift for his older brother, Mark, who lived in a small town just off his route. They hadn't spoken in years, not since a big argument about money. But Mark had reached out, and Leo wanted to make peace. The eagle was a symbol of freedom and family, something they both loved as kids. He pulled off the main highway onto a smaller, quieter road that cut through dense forests. The tall trees created a tunnel of green, and the sunlight danced through the leaves. According to his GPS, he was about an hour from Mark's town. That's when he saw her. A young woman was standing by the side of the road, one arm held out, thumb up. A hitchhiker. She looked pale and tired, wearing a simple blue dress and no coat, which was strange for the cool forest air. A small, worn-out backpack was at her feet. Leo normally never picked up hitchhikers. His company had rules, and his mother had given him too many warnings. But something about her made him slow down. She looked lost, not dangerous. He pulled Bertha over onto the gravel shoulder, the air brakes hissing loudly. He rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" he called out. The woman nodded quickly, her eyes wide with what looked like relief. She picked up her backpack and walked to the passenger side. Leo leaned over and opened the door for her. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper as she climbed up into the high cabin. She placed her backpack on the floor and fastened her seatbelt, her movements slow and careful. "No problem," Leo said, putting the truck back into gear. "I'm Leo. Heading towards Silver Creek." The woman just nodded again, looking straight ahead. She didn't offer her name. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Leo tried to make conversation. "Beautiful day, isn't it? Not too much traffic on this road." The woman turned her head slightly and gave a small, weak smile but said nothing. "Are you heading to Silver Creek too?" Leo asked. She shook her head. Then, she pointed a thin finger ahead, down the road. "Further on?" Leo guessed. She nodded. Okay, Leo thought. She's the quiet type. He turned the radio back on, but kept the volume low. The silence felt heavy. He glanced at her occasionally. She was young, maybe in her early 20s. Her hair was long and dark, and she kept her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't look at her phone or out the window with interest. She just sat, perfectly still and quiet. After about 20 minutes, they passed a small, clear lake. The sun was starting to go down, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Pretty view," Leo remarked, trying again. The woman followed his gaze to the lake, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. Leo's curiosity grew. This wasn't just shyness. This was a deep sadness. He decided not to push her. Maybe she just needed a quiet ride. An hour passed. The forest was getting darker. Leo's GPS told him his exit for Silver Creek was coming up in 10 miles. He needed to know where to let her off. "My turn is coming up soon," he said gently. "Where exactly are you going?" "I can drop you at the closest spot." The woman turned to him. Her eyes, which had seemed sad before, were now filled with a profound, silent pleading. She didn't point or speak. She just looked at him, and then looked down at the box on the seat between them, the box with the wooden eagle. Then, she did something strange. She reached out one hand and gently touched the top of the cardboard box. Her touch was light, almost reverent. She looked back at Leo, and for a split second, he felt a chill, a feeling he couldn't explain. His GPS buzzed. "In 500 feet, turn right onto Pine Road." Pine Road was his exit. The road to his brother's house. The road to making things right. The woman was still looking at him, her hand still resting on the box. She wasn't pointing down the main highway. She was looking towards the exit. Towards Pine Road. A crazy idea formed in Leo's mind. It made no sense. She didn't know him or his brother. She didn't know what was in the box. Are you saying I should take this turn?" he asked, his voice hesitant. The silent passenger nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his. The GPS repeated its instruction. "Turn right onto Pine Road." Leo's mind raced. This was insane. He was listening to a stranger who hadn't spoken a word, telling him to go to his brother's house. But the feeling in the truck was so strong, so certain. He remembered the tear at the lake. He remembered her silent plea. He took a deep breath. "Okay," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "Okay." He put on his turn signal and guided the big truck onto the narrow, winding Pine Road. The woman finally took her hand off the box and sat back, a look of peace settling on her face. They drove in silence for another 15 minutes, the forest pressing in on both sides. The sun had almost set now. Finally, a small wooden house appeared on the left, with a mailbox that had M. Evans painted on it. Mark's house. Leo pulled the truck over and turned off the engine. The sudden quiet was startling. "Well," he said, turning to the woman. "This is my stop. I can try to take you further after this, if you..." He stopped. The passenger seat was empty. He blinked. She was gone. Her small backpack was gone too. The seatbelt was fastened, as if no one had ever been there. A cold shock ran down his spine. How? When? He hadn't stopped the truck since she got in. He shook his head, trying to clear his confusion. He had a job to do. He picked up the box with the eagle and stepped out of the truck, his legs feeling weak. He walked up the path to the old house. The porch light was on. He knocked on the door. It opened, and there stood his brother, Mark. He looked older, with more gray in his hair, but his eyes were the same. "Leo?" Mark said, his voice full of surprise. You came." "I brought you something," Leo said, holding out the box. "A peace offering." Mark took the box, his hands trembling slightly. He opened the flaps and lifted out the beautifully carved eagle. His eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Leo," he whispered. "This means more than you know." He looked past Leo, towards the truck. Did you bring someone with you?" Leo turned. A passenger. "But she's gone." Mark's face was pale. "A woman? In a blue dress?" Leo felt a new chill. "Yes." "How did you know?" Mark stepped back and gestured for Leo to come inside. On the mantelpiece was a framed photograph of a young, smiling woman with long dark hair. She was wearing a blue dress. "That's Sarah," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. "My daughter. Your niece." Leo stared at the photo. It was her. The silent passenger. She passed away a year ago, Mark continued, wiping a tear from his eye. "A car accident. On the main highway, just near the turnoff for this road. She was coming home to see me. We had argued, just like you and I did. We never made peace." Leo's heart was pounding. He couldn't speak. Mark looked at the wooden eagle in his hands. "The last time I spoke to her, I told her a story from when we were kids. About how you and I found an injured eagle and nursed it back to health. She loved that story. She said it was a symbol of our family, broken, but able to heal and fly again." He looked at Leo, a strange understanding in his eyes. "You saw her today, didn't you? On the anniversary of her accident." Leo could only nod. "She brought you here," Mark said softly. "She knew I was sitting here, full of regret, wishing I could talk to you again. Wishing for a sign. And she knew you were carrying this." He held up the eagle. "She guided you home, Leo. She was our silent passenger, making one last journey to bring her family back together." Leo looked out the window at his empty truck. The road was dark and quiet now. He felt a profound sense of peace, mixed with the strange, beautiful mystery of what had just happened. He hadn't just carried a box today. He had carried a message. A message of forgiveness, delivered by a ghost who longed for her family to be whole again.